We are about halfway through a series called Pray Hurt. Several months ago, as we were putting sermons together for the year, we said, let's talk about prayer. We haven't done that in a while. And as it sort of developed and grew, it turned into an opportunity, I think, for us to think about what it means to pray through the difficult times of our lives, to pray through the storms of our lives, to pray through our own feelings of hurt, which we experience all the time. What does it look like to pray angry? What does it look like to pray when we feel guilty or overwhelmed or lonely? And today we'll look at what it means to pray confused. And I said at the very beginning, I've said it both weeks before, that if you get nothing else out of this, I hope that you remember this point, that prayer can remind us who God is when we need that reminder the most. Prayer is not always about submitting our checklist of requests. It's not even always just about giving thanks or offering praise to God. Prayer, the experience of prayer and the act of praying when we are hurt, the act of praying when we don't feel like it, the act of praying when we're confused, overwhelmed, guilty, etc., reminds us who God is. And so we're going to continue with that this week, thinking about what it means to pray when we're confused. And I have also said many times throughout this series, this is my favorite psalm, or that is my favorite psalm. Really, I mean it this time. One of the verses, no, this is not, one of the verses that we're going to look at today, I think is my favorite single verse in the entire Psalter. So out of the goodness, no, 150 Psalms. I don't know how many verses that would be. But I really love it. So we'll see that in a little bit. It is amazing to me how quickly, let me put it this way, how long it takes to put a good plan together, but how quickly it can fall apart. You know what I mean? It's like we spend all this time stacking all the blocks, and it only takes one getting kind of knocked askew for the whole thing to go down. I was going to try to think of a good example of a time in my life where I didn't know what was going on, where a plan fell apart and I was just completely lost. And the problem is I came up with way too many. Like, we don't have the time to go through all of them. So I'm just going to share a couple of them, and hopefully, even if you've not had these exact experiences, you can relate to the feeling of thinking you understood and then having everything kind of yanked out from under you. One of them, you've maybe heard before. I don't know if I've told this story up front before or not. If you've heard it before, you can laugh at my expense. I have been a parent for almost 10 years. Before that, I practiced on some of your children when we worked with the youth here. Yeah, you guys, you've practiced with other people's kids before. This is fine. So Ian is, like I said, he's almost 10, and when he was, maybe not quite 2, I feel like, it was just he and I at the house. Every Wednesday evening was guys' night. Nicole worked late on Wednesdays, and so it's just Ian and I. And in general, I say this mostly to convince myself, I'm a good father. I know, sort of what I'm doing. And I had, this particular day, though, I was feeling good. Everyone was getting ready. I had, gotten dinner in the crock pot. Later, I'm not going to have the time. I'd done all these things. And I got him home from daycare, and we were having a good time. I said, well, he's happy. He was watching, I don't know, Cuckoo Kangaroo or some nonsense. And whatever. And I was like, I'm going to eat while he's happy, and then I'll be able to feed him. I had this plan, and I was feeling so good about it. I go to the table, and I'm eating my dinner, and he came in. He was at that terrible age where he can open the fridge himself. And I, have been broke ever since because he just eats everything. He came in, and he asked for yogurt, so I got a yogurt out. I picked him up. I set him in his high chair. This is an important detail. We'll find out later. I picked him up and set him in the high chair. Gave him his yogurt. Finished my dinner, life was good, and I kid you not, it's just he and I, but I walked in to stand next to the high chair just to gloat to myself, just to stand there for a second and be like, I'm doing pretty good. I got this dad thing down, solid. All of my plans were great, and that's when I saw it. The diaper. without a kid in it, just a diaper, like in the middle of the living room, just like chilling. And remember, I picked this kid up and I put him in his, and I look a little more, and it seems like, without getting graphic, that he had been sitting on the couch without that diaper. And then when he wanted his yogurt, he kind of scooched off the couch, and then he came in. So, I dealt with that. I cleaned it up. It was fine. We got him cleaned up. We burned that high chair. We don't have it. We got rid of it. I got him in the tub, as you do. I texted Nicole. I was like, when you get home, you got to, I have a story to tell you, because, and she came in, and I said, you will never guess what your son did while you were at work. And she said, yeah, that's right, your son, that's right. She said, he peed on the kitchen floor. And I was like, no, it's even funnier than that. She goes, no, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. What? And how quickly I fell. I had the plan, I worked the plan, I was proud of the plan. And just like that, it was gone. Everything fell apart. I'm a good father. Another example, maybe a little more serious. When I was a senior in college, the first time, I was finishing up at Bible college. I'd been working throughout that spring at a church in Grand Haven, and had a plan with the leadership there, with the pastors there. I was going to come on staff at that church after I graduated. Really looking forward to it. Very happy about this plan. Nicole and I were going to get married that summer. Also very happy about that plan. Also, as a part of my kind of last semester at college, me and two of the other guys that I went to school with made a plan for what we called Behind Locked Doors, the super secret man trip. We had the plan, we were going to save up all of our skips, and we were going to just leave the whole last week of class, do all our homework early, and we were going to leave. We had this road trip planned. We're driving through several states. We're going all over the place. It was going to be great. We're very excited about it. I was going to do my super secret man trip. I was going to graduate. I was going to start my job at this church, and I was going to get married. And then right before that week started, I was talking to the guys. I said, okay, we're ready. We're leaving on such and such a day. And both of them, the slackers that they are, and I won't tell you their names because some of you know them, they say, oh, we didn't save our skips. We can't leave. We're not going anywhere. I was like, oh, really? Really? I did my homework for nothing? I went to class for... and then I went to church that Sunday at the place I'd been working and was going to start working after graduation. And after service, one of the elders said, hey, can you swing by my house? I need to talk to you. And he told me when I got there that the finances weren't where they thought they were going to be, and I didn't have a job. And then he wrote me a personal check to pay me for that Sunday, the one I was there, but then he said, this is it. And I drove home. I called Nicole. We weren't married yet, but I called Nicole, just crying in the car. It's terribly unsafe, but I don't know what we're going to do. I'm supposed to start school at Grand Valley. I'm supposed to have a job, and then we're supposed to be married. And all of this stuff, and none of this is happening. And I don't even get to kind of blow off steam and drive around the country anymore because the slackers that I call friends didn't save any of their skips. I ended up going to my parents' house for the week. They live in Kentucky on just shy of 80 acres, and I just wandered around in the woods for days. I turned into like a mountain person because I had no idea. What happened? What happened to this plan? And that very quickly turned into questions like, God, where are you? Because I thought God had opened those doors. Right? I thought that plan was God's plan, and that happens to us, I think, all the time. That we think, it's very easy to think my plan is God's plan, and sometimes it's not. And it leads us to ask questions like, where are you? What is the plan? God, what are you doing? God, do you even know what you're doing? And I said the first week, and I think this is really important, that we can ask these questions in prayer, and it's not an act of rebellion. We ask these questions not because we doubt. We ask these questions in prayer because we believe that God can answer them. It is okay to go to God and say, God, it seems like you don't know what you're doing. Because we believe in faith that he will answer that prayer and he will show us what we need to see. And that sort of question, the questions like that we ask in our confusion, when our plans have fallen apart, are the kinds of questions that we see come up in the Psalms. So Psalm 74 is kind of the main one we want to look at today. At the very beginning, the first couple verses, he talks about how the enemies of God have kind of taken over God's city, how they've kind of begun to sack Jerusalem. And in verse 4, it picks up and says this, your foes roared in the place where you met with us, the temple. They set up their standards as signs. They behaved like men wielding axes to cut through a thicket of trees. They smashed all of the carved paneling with their axes and hatchets. They burned your sanctuary to the ground. They defiled the dwelling place of your name. They said in their hearts, we will crush them completely. They burned every place where God was worshipped in the land. We are given no signs from God. No prophets are left, and none of us knows how long this will be. How long will the enemy mock you, God? Will the foe revile your name forever? Why do you take back your hand, your right hand? Take it from the folds of your garment and destroy them. Verse 9, we can throw that back up there. I think I have it in again. I love this verse because it is one of the most gut-wrenching prayers, but like heartfelt prayers in the Psalms. I read this verse and I absolutely understand where they're coming from. God, we have no signs. There are no prophets left. None of us knows how long this will be. In the NRSV, which is the version of these Psalms I'm the most used to reading, I guess, it says, we can no longer see our emblems. The things that we set up to remind us of who God is, that show us, that tell us the stories of what God has done. We can't see those things anymore. They're gone. So what do we do now? In Psalm 77, we have similar ideas, kind of similar heartfelt prayers. This is what it says starting in verse 7. Will the Lord reject forever? Will he never show his favor again? Has his unfailing love vanished forever? Has his promise failed for all time? Has God forgotten to be merciful? Has he in anger withheld his compassion? And then a little further down in verse 19, it says, your path led through the sea, your way through the mighty waters, though your footprints were not seen. The psalmist in a lot of these psalms says, God, I can't see what you're doing. Several of those verses in Psalm 77 just punch so hard. It's like, God, all of those things that we say you are, we don't see it. God is always compassionate. I don't see that compassion. God is always merciful. I don't see it. God keeps his promises, but it seems like those promises have failed. He says, I know that you lead people through the seas. I know that you've walked your people through the waters. I just don't see it. I can't see your hand, your fingerprints, your footprints. I don't see any of it. I can't tell what's going on. God, I can't see what you're doing. And that is what it looks like to pray confused. We sang this song, I raise a hallelujah in the presence of my enemies. So many of these psalms that God, I can't see what you're doing. I can see my enemies. I can see them rising up all around me. I can see them succeeding in all their plans while my plans are falling apart. What's with that? These very honest, raw prayers to God. There's a similar story in the book of Job, which you're maybe familiar with. It's just before the Psalms, so if you're in the Psalms, you can kind of turn left and find it. At the very beginning, we have Job. He's this great guy. All of his plans seem to be coming to fruition. He has, his children, and he's got his crops and his cattle and all of these things that I guess is great. And then all that's gone, right? All of that is taken away. And Job's friends show up, and they do the best thing they can. They just sit there and keep their mouth shut for a while. And then they start talking, and everything goes downhill, right? And Job is fine until near the end of Job, he starts to kind of mouth off. And God shows up in Job 38 in this really beautiful kind of, what's the nicest way to put this, kind of snarky way, that after Job has started asking questions, God shows up and starts to answer them. Look in Job 38, starting in verse 2. God says to Job, "Who is this that obscures my plans with words without knowledge?" It's like, you are talking and you don't know what you're talking about. And then he says, "Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you can answer me." It's like, oh boy. Whew. And then it goes on. "Where were you," God asked Job, "when I laid the earth's foundations? Tell me, if you understand. Who marked off the world's dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it?" And he carries on in this way. That Job has been asking God questions. What is it with God? Why did this happen to me, God? Why did this all fall apart? And God says, "I have some questions for you." Which one of us is God and which one isn't? Just remind me again. Where were you when in my power I was putting the entire world together? Since you seem to know so much. Where were you when I set the foundations of the world? And all of this. And it's very, I think, telling to me that when God shows up to Job, God doesn't give Job the answers to all of his questions. What God does when he shows up is he reminds Job who is in control. And I think in my experience, when I have prayed confused, I don't always get the answers. I wish I did. It might make things a little easier. But I rarely get there. When I go to God with these questions, "God, what are you doing? Where are you? Why is everything falling apart?" I could probably count on no fingers the number of times he has said, "Well, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Here's the exact plan of what's coming next." That doesn't happen to me. If it happens to you, good on you. Instead, I'm reminded who God is, that God is powerful and that God is in control. And that even in the midst of my confusion and even when my plans fall apart, God has a plan that is working, that is moving, and that will be revealed in time. My favorite minor prophet, which is a very preacher thing to say. Like, anybody else have a favorite minor prophet? No, I didn't think so. Oh, yeah, same. Yeah, good for you. My favorite minor prophet is Habakkuk. It's a very short book. It's only 3 chapters. And I can give you the entire synopsis of Habakkuk in just a few sentences. Habakkuk prays to God and says, "God, what is going on? Everything is wrong. Everything's falling apart, and you need to step in and do something." And so God answers Habakkuk. He says, "I am going to step in and do something. Check this out. I'm raising up the Babylonians." And Habakkuk says, "Your plan is terrible. They're worse than we are." Like, what kind of plan is this? And God, much like when he responds to Job, God responds to Habakkuk and reminds Habakkuk who is in control. Reminds Habakkuk which of them is God and which one is not. And then Habakkuk responds in chapter 3 with words of praise. And the tail end of Habakkuk 3, kind of the end of that book, I really love. Starting in verse 17, it says this: "Even though the fig tree does not bud, and there are no grapes on the vine, even though the olive crop fails and the field produce no food, even though there are no sheep in the pen, no cattle in the stalls, yet," we love this word, we've seen it a bunch, "yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in God my Savior, the sovereign Lord who is my strength." That "yet" word, that's the big one. Habakkuk says, even though all of these things are falling apart, even though I'm not seeing my plans come to fruition, even though I'm not seeing the blessings that I expect from God, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. Yet I will be joyful in God my Savior. The sovereign Lord, the Lord who is in control, is my strength. And that is ultimately where Psalm 74 goes. I said I love that one verse in Psalm 74. We don't see our emblems. We don't have any prophets. No one is bringing us this word from God. No one among us knows how long that this is going to keep going. And later on in Psalm 74, he says this, starting in verse 12. But, it's kind of like yet, close enough. "But God is my king from long ago. He brings salvation on the earth. It was you, God, who split open the sea by your power. You broke the heads of the monster in the waters. It was you who crushed the head of Leviathan and gave it as food to the creatures of the desert. It was you who opened up springs and streams. You dried up the ever-flowing rivers. The day is yours, yours also the night. You established the sun and the moon. It was you who set all the boundaries of the earth. You made both summer and winter. This whole thing, he goes on talking about God's awesome power in creation, how God made the world, how God established the world, how God overcomes chaos and difficulty. This whole Leviathan thing is super interesting for another time. Ask me later if you want to know how that is connected to the creation stuff. But God is in control, is where it ends. Even though we can't see our emblems, even though we can't see those reminders of what God has done, even though there aren't prophets bringing us a word from God to tell us what is going on, even though none of us knows how long this might last, what happens to our failed plans, even though we don't see any of that, God is in control. The God who made the heavens and the earth, the God who put this whole world together, is still in control. And we can pray, confused, knowing that God is in control, knowing that God is at work, even when we don't feel it, even when we don't see it, even when we don't understand it. That God is still working, that God's ways are better than our ways, that God's plans do not fail even when our plans fall through.